Okay, so you want to own a Hilton. Good news, it's one of the most recognized names on the planet. 9,158 hotels, 1.35 million rooms, 143 countries. A brand so trusted that 250 million people carry its loyalty card. It sounds like the safest, most established business in hospitality. Here's the strange part. Hilton doesn't own them. Of those 9,000 hotels, the Hilton company owns 46. The Hilton in your city? Not Hilton's. Which makes this video different from most on this channel, because unlike an IKEA, you actually can own a Hilton. Hilton is in fact extremely eager for you to own one. By the end of this video, you will understand why the most famous hotel company on earth spent 2 decades getting rid of its hotels, and why Wall Street rewarded it for that. You will understand the 3-letter document that can force you to spend millions of dollars renovating a building you already own. You will understand why the founder kept a photograph of one hotel under the glass of his desk for 30 years, and why the company he built eventually sold that exact hotel to keep the fees. And you will understand why the biggest threat to this entire machine isn't Airbnb or a recession. It's the people who own the buildings. Start with what it costs to get in, because the first surprise is the direction of the transaction. You do not buy a hotel from Hilton. You build one for them. The entry-level ticket is a Hampton by Hilton, the budget workhorse of the empire. And according to the current franchise disclosure documents, putting one up runs from roughly $15 million to $22 million, with an initial franchise fee of about $100,000 and several million in liquid cash required before they'll take you seriously. That's the cheap seat. A full-service hotel under the flagship Hilton brand is a different galaxy. Total investment figures in the disclosure paperwork run from around $50 million to over $200 million, depending on the market and the size of the box. And the money is only the first filter. Hilton reviews your balance sheet, your operating history, your site, your plans. There is an application. There are committees. You are, functionally, being interviewed for the privilege of spending $20 million. Because here's the inversion that defines everything that follows. You don't pay Hilton to put your name on their building. You pay Hilton, continuously, forever, to put their name on yours. And once the sign is up, the meter starts. This is where the economics get uncomfortable. As a franchisee, you pay a royalty. 5 to 6% of your room revenue, depending on the brand, plus a program fee of roughly 4% that funds marketing and the reservation system, plus charges tied to the loyalty program and the booking infrastructure. Stack it up and estimates across the industry run to somewhere around 10% or more of everything your rooms earn, skimmed off the top line. Read that carefully. Off revenue, not profit, revenue. Then, from what's left, you pay the housekeepers, the front desk, the electricity, the property taxes, the insurance, the 15 to 25% commission on every booking that arrives through an online travel agency, and the mortgage on a $20 million building. On a bad night, everyone in that hotel gets paid something. The brand gets paid, the bank gets paid, the staff gets paid. There is exactly one person in the building who can lose money that night, and you're the one holding the deed. Hilton's percentage is a toll, your profit is a hope. And the arithmetic at the bottom is leaner than the marble lobby suggests. On paper, a well-run hotel looks healthy. Industry benchmarks put gross operating margins in the 30 to 40% range before the big fixed bills arrive. Then the franchise stack takes its slice. The debt service takes its slice. The property tax bill and the insurance and the replacement reserve take theirs. And what actually reaches the owner of a franchised hotel in a normal year is, by most estimates, a single-digit slice of what the guests paid. Thinner than most people would ever guess from the room rate. You spent $20 million to earn a margin in the same neighborhood as the gas station you could have bought for a tenth of the price. So why would anyone sane sign this deal? Because of the machine you're renting. And the machine is genuinely extraordinary. Hilton Honors has 243 million members. That is more people than live in Brazil. It grew by 15% in a single year. Those members book directly, they book repeatedly, and they walk past the independent hotel across the street without seeing it. Because their points, their status, their free nights, their app that unlocks the room door, all of it lives inside the Hilton system. A huge share of your occupancy doesn't come from your marketing. It arrives through the pipe. That pipe is what your 10% actually buys. A reservation engine with 250 million people plugged into it. And a name that lets you charge more per night than the identical concrete box next door. The flag is rented Gravity. Though even the Gravity has fine print. When a guest checks in on points, Hilton reimburses you for that room. And the reimbursement formula belongs to Hilton, not to you. When the hotel would have sat empty anyway, the payout can land far below your posted rate, and you're contractually obliged to smile and hand over the keycard. The loyalty program that fills your rooms is priced, administered, and adjudicated by the same company that charges you to belong to it. And Hilton has organized that Gravity into 24 brands, arranged in a ladder from Waldorf Astoria at the top, down through Conrad, Hilton, Doubletree, Hampton, all the way to Spark at the bottom, so that no traveler at any price point ever needs to leave the funnel. You aren't buying a hotel brand. You're buying a slot in a machine that captures a customer at 19 and keeps them until the funeral. But to really understand what you're getting into, you need to understand what Hilton itself became, because it is one of the great quiet transformations in modern business. Hilton spent almost a century buying hotels. Then it spent 2 decades methodically getting rid of every single one. In 2007, the private equity firm Blackstone bought the whole company for around $26 billion, one of the largest hotel deals ever done. In 2017, Hilton split itself into 3 pieces and handed the actual real estate to a separate company. What remained, the thing still called Hilton, is a business that owns almost no buildings, employs almost none of the housekeepers, and carries almost none of the risk. It sells reservations and collects percentages. And the results are spectacular. In 2025, Hilton reported about $1.5 billion in net income, adjusted earnings of $3.7 billion, and returned $3.3 billion to its shareholders, while adding 97,000 new rooms to the system in a single year. That is roughly 265 new rooms every day, and Hilton didn't pay to build any of them. You did. People like you did. The company discovered that the building is the risk and the name is the profit, and it kept the name. Owning less made it worth more. But the single biggest shock of owning a Hilton isn't the build cost, and it isn't the royalty. It's a 3-letter document that arrives by email. PIP, Property Improvement Plan. The deal you signed doesn't just license you a name. It binds you to brand standards, and Hilton enforces them with renovation orders. New lobby, new bathrooms, new furniture package, new signage, new soft goods, sometimes a full exterior reskin. When your franchise term rolls over, when the property trades hands, or when the brand refreshes its look, the PIP lands, and the costs routinely run into the millions per property. Across the American hotel industry, the accumulated backlog of brand-mandated renovations is estimated in the tens of billions of dollars. Now follow the incentives, because this is the elegant part. A consistent, freshly renovated system makes the flag more valuable across all 9,000 hotels. You pay 100% of the renovation. Hilton collects its percentage of whatever extra revenue the renovation produces. Heads, Hilton wins. Tails, Hilton still collects 5%. And if you refuse, if you decide the flag isn't worth a $4 million lobby, you can lose the brand, and with it the pipe. And the exit usually costs you liquidated damages calculated in multiples of your annual fees. You own the building. You just don't get to decide what it looks like inside. Which brings us to the man who started all of it, and who would either have hated this machine or recognized it instantly. In 1919, a 31-year-old from New Mexico named Conrad Hilton arrived in Cisco, Texas, with his savings, by his own account about $5,000, intending to buy a bank. The bank deal collapsed. So he walked over to the Mobley Hotel, a 2-story brick building across from the railroad, in the middle of an oil boom so intense that the hotel was renting each bed in 8-hour shifts, 3 sleeping oilmen per mattress per day. A hotel that turned its inventory 3 times a night. He bought it, with partners, for around $40,000, and reportedly told his mother he'd found something better than a bank. For the next 30 years, he chased one building. He kept a photograph of the Waldorf Astoria under the glass on his desk, and in 1949 he finally got it, calling it the greatest of them all. Now here's the beat that tells you what Hilton became. In 2014, the corporation Conrad built sold the Waldorf Astoria to a Chinese insurance company for $1.95 billion, at the time the highest price ever paid for a single hotel. And in the same transaction, Hilton kept a 100-year contract to manage it. Read that structure again. They sold the trophy and kept the toll booth. Conrad's dream hotel became the purest expression of the machine. All of the fees, none of the ownership. Now let's talk about what happens when the people holding the other end of this deal start doing the math. Because the asset-light model has exactly one input it cannot manufacture: other people's capital. Hilton's growth, that's 6.7% expansion a year, depends entirely on investors volunteering billions to build buildings Hilton will never own. And the volunteers are getting squeezed from 3 directions at once. Construction costs and interest rates have pushed that $15 million Hampton toward 20 and beyond. Labor costs are climbing in every market, and Hilton keeps launching new brands, filling in every gap in the ladder, which owners increasingly read as new Hilton-flagged competition opening down the street from their existing Hilton. In 2024, one of the largest hotel worker unions publicly urged Hilton owners to sit down and calculate whether the brand still returns more than it takes. That is the quiet war inside every franchise empire. The flag is only worth flying while 10% of revenue buys more than 10% of revenue. The moment enough owners conclude it doesn't and take their buildings independent or to a softer, cheaper brand, the machine that runs on other people's concrete starts to starve. Hilton's genius was converting itself from a company that owns hotels into a company that owns the belief that its name is worth the toll. Beliefs scale beautifully. They can also break. So here's where you stand. There are 9,158 Hiltons on Earth, holding 1.35 million rooms across 143 countries, and the company whose name is on every one of them owns 46, because everything else was built with money like yours, by owners who pay around 10% off the top for the gravity of a loyalty program bigger than Brazil, who renovate on command when a three-letter document arrives, inside a system so committed to fees over property that it sold the founder's dream hotel for $2 billion and kept the management contract, run by a company that added 97,000 rooms last year without buying a single brick. That is the deal on the table. Owning a Hilton is either the closest thing to plugging a $20 million building into a money machine that hospitality has ever produced, or it's the discovery that in the world's most famous hotel company, the only person actually in the hotel business is you. You decide.